It was late on a Friday night when my phone buzzed with a message from my brother, Liam. The tone was rushed, panicked almost, and I could tell before even opening the thread that something was wrong. "Can you call me ASAP?" it read, and my chest tightened with that familiar pressure that always came when he reached out after months of silence. He only ever reached out when he needed something. Still, I called him, already trying to calm the whirlwind in my mind. He picked up. After the first ring, his voice shaky, breathless. "Look, I hate to ask you this," he began, which was always how it started. "But I'm in a really bad spot. I need $500 by tomorrow or I'm going to lose my apartment." I didn't respond immediately. My eyes drifted to the small stack of bills and receipts sitting on my kitchen table, reminders of my own unpaid rent, my overdrawn credit card, the meager savings I had left. But this was my brother, my only sibling. I had grown up with his hand in mine, had defended him in school fights, had held him when he cried after our mom died. I couldn't say no, even though everything in me warned me I should. "How bad is it?" I asked, even though the answer didn't matter. He spun a story, how he'd been shorted on a paycheck, how he was trying to get back on his feet, how this was just temporary, how he'd pay me back by next week no sooner if he could. Every sentence that came out of his mouth sounded carefully constructed, like a script he'd rehearsed. But I didn't question him. I wanted to believe him so badly. I wanted to believe that he meant it this time, that he wasn't lying. I wired him the money an hour later. It was all I had left, literally. I knew the next 2 weeks would be tight. I'd eat toast and eggs, skip social events, delay some bills. But it would be okay. He was my brother. He'd come through. I went to bed that night feeling a quiet ache in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. I stared at the ceiling for hours, playing back his voice in my head, remembering the little tremor in it that I told myself meant sincerity. I'd always been the one who bailed him out. Since high school, it had been one thing after another: car trouble, bad roommates, lost jobs, failed relationships. I told myself he just needed time. People heal at different paces. That's what I told myself. The next day, I didn't hear from him. I figured he was busy, maybe sorting out his living situation. I sent a text just to check in. "Everything okay?" But it didn't deliver. That was strange. I waited an hour, then tried calling. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. My stomach dropped. I checked his social media. His profile was gone. Or rather, I wasn't on his friends list anymore. My throat tightened. I went to our last text conversation and noticed something I hadn't seen before. A little note beneath my message. "Message not delivered." I froze. I opened another app, tried messaging him there. Nothing. I used a friend's phone to call. It rang. He picked up, probably not recognizing the number. "Hello?" His voice was clear, casual, like he hadn't just erased me from his digital life. "It's me," I said, my voice sharp with disbelief. "Why did you block me?" There was a pause, a long one, then a sigh. "Look, I didn't want to deal with it." "Deal with what?" I asked, my heart thundering. "I gave you my last $500, Liam." He exhaled again, the kind of exhale that sounded like a shrug. "I didn't ask you to give me your last. That was your choice." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but there was no sound. My thoughts were a flood, too fast to form words. He hung up. That night, I sat on the floor of my kitchen, knees to my chest, staring at my phone like it might explain something I missed. I kept thinking of when we were kids, building forts with blankets and pretending the floor was lava. Of how he used to hold my hand when I was scared of the dark. I remembered our mom's funeral, how he leaned on me so hard I thought I might collapse from the weight. And now this. But that was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I'd see his face. Childhood Liam, not the man who just cut me off without remorse. I could still hear his laugh, the way it used to erupt uncontrollably when we watched stupid movies together, our legs tangled on the old corduroy couch. He used to be gentle, He used to be good. Or maybe I just wanted him to be. Maybe the memory of who he once was had grown so loud that I couldn't hear who he really was now. The next morning, I checked my bank account again. The $2.43 balance mocked me. Rent was due in 5 days. I had a quarter tank of gas, no groceries, and I was already behind on 2 bills. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my chipped coffee mug like it might offer advice. I felt humiliated, used. And yet, the guilt still twisted itself around my ribs like somehow I was the one who'd failed. I went to work that day numb. My body moved through the motions. Log in, respond to emails, attend meetings. But my mind was drifting like a balloon someone had let go of. I kept thinking about the last time I said no to Liam. It was almost a year ago. He'd asked for help covering a vet bill for a dog he no longer even had. I told him I couldn't do it, that I was struggling myself. He didn't speak to me for 3 months. 3 whole months of silence. And when he did resurface, it was like nothing had happened. That was his way. Brush everything under the rug and hope nobody remembers where the bumps are. At lunch, I sat outside with my sad little container of rice and frozen veggies. I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed a mutual friend had tagged Liam in a photo. My breath caught. It was him, smiling with a beer in his hand, surrounded by people I didn't know. It had been posted just an hour ago. I clicked through the photos, my chest tightening with every new image. He was partying, laughing, wearing a new jacket I'd never seen before. He didn't look like someone who had nearly lost his apartment. He looked like someone celebrating a win. I didn't even realize I was crying until the screen blurred and my nose started to run. I wiped my face and laughed bitterly. That money wasn't for rent. It was never for rent. I don't know what hurt more, that he lied to me again, or that he didn't even feel the need to lie well. He didn't even bother making it believable. That night, I started to go through old photos. I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to remind myself that our connection had once been real. There was one of us at the lake, maybe 8 and 10 years old. He had his arm around my shoulders, grinning, his hair wet and wild. I remembered that day. He pushed me off the dock and then jumped in after me, laughing so hard he almost choked on lake water. I had trusted him with everything even then. I scrolled forward in time. High school, him at prom with a girl I'd helped him write a poem for. Then college, briefly. He dropped out halfway through his 2nd semester, said he wasn't cut out for it. I'd helped him move out of his dorm and back into Dad's house. I'd carried half those boxes myself, and every time life kicked him down, I was there. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I took his calls at 3 a.m. I sat on the floor with him when he had panic attacks. I talked him out of walking away from jobs, from relationships, from himself. And this was how it ended? He could have said thank you. He could have told me he wasn't ready to change. He could have been honest, even just a little. But instead, he took what he needed and disappeared, as if I were nothing more than a vending machine that happened to run out of bills. I started writing a message that night, that I wrote and rewrote it 5 times. The first version was furious, fire and ash. The second was cold, surgical in its pain. The third was pleading. The 4th was numb. The 5th, I didn't send. None of them felt right. Because what do you say? To someone who doesn't care. What words could matter to a person who saw your last $500 as nothing more than a ticket to a good weekend? By the time I closed my phone, my hands were shaking. I had nothing left to give. Not just money, me. I was empty. I curled up on the couch and stared at the window as the city lights blinked in the distance, and I tried to imagine a world where Liam didn't exist. A world where I didn't have this gaping wound where my trust used to be. But memories are not wounds. They're ghosts. And Liam's ghost was everywhere. The days that followed blurred into each other like colors bleeding in the rain. Every morning I woke up with that same pit in my stomach, as if grief had moved in and started redecorating. I stopped checking my phone as much. There were no texts. From him, no attempts to explain or apologize. Not even a lazy excuse. It was as if I had vanished from his life, erased as neatly as a pencil mark wiped away with a good eraser. At work, I went silent. My coworkers, normally chatty and full of questions, began to step around me like I was something fragile. I must have looked different, maybe in the eyes. That's where the pain always settles, in the places that don't bruise. I caught myself, almost texting him a few times. Not to ask for the money back, that was long gone, but just to ask why. Why it was so easy for him. Why I still felt loyal to someone who'd betrayed me like this. I remembered when I gave him that $500. I had sat there staring at the send payment button for a full minute, thumb hovering, hoping something would stop me. Some sign, some instinct that would scream don't. But there was only silence and trust. Old, stubborn trust. That week, I got a notice from my landlord. A yellow slip, crumpled in my mailbox like it didn't mean anything, but it did. A final warning. One more missed rent, and I'd be evicted. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it up and put it in my sock drawer. I didn't even cry. Not this time. I was out of tears, worn smooth by disappointment. The worst part was, I couldn't tell anyone. My friends would ask why I gave him the money in the first place. My answer would sound so hollow. Because he's my brother. What did that even mean anymore? Did blood actually bind anything? Or was it just a cruel trick we were taught to believe? A rope thrown between people who didn't deserve it. I started dreaming about him. Always the same dream. We were kids again, running through the backyard, our mother's voice calling from the porch. He would look back at me, laughing, calling, "Come on, slowpoke!" And I'd run faster, chasing him, reaching out. But no matter how fast I ran, I never caught up. The distance grew and grew until he was just a speck, and then gone. When I woke up, I'd lie still, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of my apartment like it was pressing in on me. I hadn't had a real meal in days. I was rationing, crackers, eating rice with water, waiting for payday. I tried applying for side gigs, even considered selling some old electronics, but my energy was gone. All of it. Grief is heavier when it's soaked in betrayal. One evening, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Jess, Liam's ex-girlfriend. It was short. "Hey, I heard what happened. Just want you to know, you're not the only one." That sentence hung in the air like a thundercloud. I messaged back, hesitantly. She told me stories. About how Liam had borrowed money from her, too. About how he'd cried on her floor, telling her he was going to change. About how he ghosted her the week after she helped him pay off a loan he never had. She said he used people, and when they were drained, he left. I read her messages with a numb sort of clarity. Pieces started clicking into place. Moments I had ignored or excused. Patterns. This wasn't new behavior. It wasn't a one-time lapse. This was who he'd become. Or maybe, who he had always been. I just hadn't seen it. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I looked at my reflection. Really looked. I didn't see weakness. I saw someone who had loved too hard, trusted too much, held on too long. And for a moment, I forgave myself. Not him, me, for being human, for wanting to believe in someone who didn't deserve it. But forgiveness doesn't heal overnight. It doesn't make the emptiness go away. It just softens the edges a little, lets you breathe without choking on memory. I started packing a small box. Just a few things: books, a photo frame, a blanket, in case I had to leave. I wasn't sure where I'd go yet, but the act of preparing felt like reclaiming some control. For the first time in days, I didn't feel helpless. I felt tired, yes. Heartbroken, absolutely, but not helpless. I deleted his number. Not in anger, but in grief. A quiet, decisive kind of grief. Not the screaming, messy kind, but the one that says I've had enough. And still, somewhere deep inside, a part of me whispered, "I miss you, Liam." Not the man who blocked me, not the liar, but the boy who used to hold my hand in the dark. Weeks passed. I didn't mark them with dates or events, only small milestones of survival. I paid just enough rent to buy time. I picked up extra shifts where I could, walking home in the cold because gas was too precious to waste. I stopped, expecting apologies. Stopped imagining my phone would buzz with a message that began with, "I'm sorry." That world didn't exist. What did exist was this quiet, unfamiliar peace, bitter but real. One Saturday morning, I took a walk to clear my head. It was the first sunny day in what felt like ages. The trees had started to blossom again, like they didn't care that the world could be cruel. I walked past the park we used to go to as kids, where Liam once pushed me on the swing so high, I swore I could touch the sky. I remembered the way he laughed then, pure and loud, before the weight of life started pressing on us like a storm cloud that never left. I stopped at the edge of the playground, watching a little boy help his younger sister climb the jungle gym. He stayed close behind her, just in case she slipped. My chest ached at the sight. For a moment, it was like watching a memory. Then it faded, and I let it. That afternoon, I got a letter in the mail with handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a card, plain, nothing more than the word "sorry" in embossed silver letters on the front. No name, no return address. Just a few words scribbled inside. I know what I did. I'm not who I was supposed to be. I hope one day you'll understand. No signature. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding like I'd just run a mile. It had to be him. It had that same hesitant tilt in the handwriting, that same awkward spacing. I didn't know if he meant it. I didn't know if this was just another manipulation, or if guilt had finally found a way into his chest and built a nest. But for the first time since he vanished from my life, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel hope either, just an ache. Didn't write back. Some bridges collapse slowly, over years. Others snap in a single breath. Ours had been crumbling for a long time. I had patched it with memories, held it together with loyalty, with the desperate hope that love was stronger than pain. But some bridges aren't meant to be crossed again. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away before the whole thing falls into the sea and takes you with it. I still thought about him. Sometimes I dreamed he came back, not to borrow money or offer apologies, but to sit beside me, quiet and real, and just be. But I always woke up alone, and that was okay. Kept going. I rebuilt, one small act at a time. I started saying no when people asked for things I couldn't give. I let myself rest without guilt. I allowed kindness, but I demanded boundaries. I carried that scar like a medal, not because it made me stronger, but because it reminded me what I survived. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit by the window with a cup of cheap tea, watching the cars below. And I'd whisper into the dark, not expecting any answer. I loved you, even when you didn't know how to love me back. And then I'd breathe and then I'd let go.